Ballava Kirvanadhari Yasodanandana Vajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballava Kirvanadhari Yasodanandana Vajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivechakacharya Astatara Shriman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivechakacharya Astatara Shrimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaja Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Gota Vaishnavrinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Garadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki. Giri Govardhana Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shaimakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhana Ki. Vrindavan Dham Ki. Mathurā Dham Ki. Navadvip Shri Mayapur Dham Ki. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki. Ganga Mai Ki, Jamuna Mai Ki, Tulasi Devi Ki, Bhakti Devi Ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki, Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 10, Verse 26. Aho alaṁ ślāghyatamaṁ yadoḥ kulam. Aho alaṁ ślāghyatamaṁ yadoḥ kulam. Aho alaṁ puṇyatamaṁ madhor vanam. Aho alaṁ puṇyatamaṁ madhor vanam. Yadeṣaḥ puṁsām ṛṣabhaḥ śriyaḥ patiḥ. Yadeṣam puṁsām ṛṣabhaḥ śriyaḥ patiḥ. sva-janmanā caṅkramaṇena cāñcati. Sva-janmanā caṅkramaṇena cāñcati. Aho alaṁ ślāghyā-tamam yadoḥ kulam. Aho alaṁ puṇyatamaṁ madhor vanam. Yadeṣaḥ puṁsām ṛṣabhaḥ śriyaḥ patiḥ. sva-janmanā caṅkramaṇena cāñcati. If anyone would like to chant. Okay. God sisters? Anyone else would like to chant? Aho, oh, alaṁ, verily, ślāghyatamaṁ, supremely glorified, yadoḥ of King Yadu, kulam, dynasty, aho, oh, alaṁ, verily, puṇyatamaṁ, supremely, supremely virtuous, madhor vanam, the land of Mathurā, yet, because, eṣaḥ, this, puṁsām, of all the living beings, ṛṣabhaḥ, supreme leader, śriyaḥ, of the goddess of fortune, patiḥ, husband, sva-janmanā, by his appearance, caṅkramaṇena, by crawling, cāñcati, glories. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Oh, how supremely glorified is the dynasty of King Yadu, and how virtuous is the land of Mathurā, where the supreme leader of all living beings, the husband of the goddess of fortune, has taken his birth and wandered in his childhood. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has expressively given a description of his transcendental appearance, disappearance, and activities. The Lord appears in a particular family or place by his inconceivable potency. He does not take his birth as a conditioned soul quits his body and accepts another body. His birth is like the appearance and disappearance of the sun. The sun arises on the eastern horizon, but that does not mean that the eastern horizon is the parent of the sun. The sun is existent in every part of the solar system, but he becomes visible at a scheduled time, and so also becomes invisible at another scheduled time. I just noticed that, but Srila Prabhupada refers to the sun as he, not impersonal, he. Very, very nice. I love it when I notice little things like that Srila Prabhupada does. Similarly, the Lord appears in this universe like the sun, and again leaves our sight at another time. He exists at all times and at every place, but by his causeless mercy, when he appears before us, we take it for granted that he has taken his birth. Anyone who can understand this truth in terms of the statements of revealed scriptures certainly becomes liberated just after quitting the present body. Liberation is obtainable after many births and after great endeavor in patience and perseverance, in knowledge and renunciation. But simply by knowing in truth about the Lord's transcendental births and activities, one can get liberation at once. This is the verdict of the Bhagavad Gita. But those who are in the darkness of ignorance conclude that the Lord's birth and activities in the material world are similar to those of the ordinary living being. Such imperfect conclusions cannot give anyone liberation. His birth, therefore, in the family of King Yadu as the son of King Vasudeva, and his transfer into the family of Nanda Maharaj in the land of Mathurā, are all transcendental arrangements made by the internal potency of the Lord. The fortunes of the Yadu dynasty and that of the inhabitants of the land of Mathurā cannot be materially estimated. If simply by knowing the transcendental nature of the birth and activities of the Lord, one can get liberation easily. Sorry, I have too many papers here. We can just imagine what is in store for those who actually enjoy the company of the Lord in person, as a family member or as a neighbor. All those who were fortunate enough to associate with the Lord, the husband of the goddess of fortune, to associate with the Lord, the husband of the goddess of fortune, certainly obtain something more than what is known as liberation. Therefore, rightly, the dynasty and the land are both ever glorious by the grace of the Lord. Om Agina Timarandasya Gana Gana Sirakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutani Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pasachadi Satarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So before beginning the class, I'd just like to introduce myself a little bit. I always think it's a little impersonal that a person is giving class and no one knows anything about that person. My name is Visvadhika Dasi, and I'm a disciple, or still trying to be a disciple, of Srila Prabhupada. I was initiated in 1973 in New Vrindavan, where I spent many, many, many wonderful years raising my son and taking care of Gurukula children and being the school nurse, going out on weekend Sankirtan, doing Christmas marathons, helping to build Prabhupada's palace, sewing for the deities. In those days, I had a lot more energy, and we did everything. So this was a great blessing. Since December 2015, I've been here in Mayapur, more or less about 9 months out of every year. And here I'm very much engaged with cow protection. I'm not one of those that runs after the cows. My body is a little too old to be doing those extremely active services. But I am involved with cow protection, and I also practice homeopathy with the devotees here in Mayapur. I consider it a great blessing to be able to live in Mayapur, and every day I can't believe that I'm here. And thank you for the opportunity to prepare this class. Certainly I lack qualifications, but we are giving classes in Srimad Bhagavatam and hearing classes not because we deem ourselves qualified. Even for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, certain qualifications are necessary. We are engaged in these activities, actually, under the instruction of our spiritual master. That is our only qualification for hearing, chanting, speaking our realizations, anything we do. And we always do so in the mood that if there is some discrepancy, a merciful Vaishnava will come to our rescue. So this whole chapter actually is a very poignant moment in the saga of the Pandavas in relation to the Kurus. All the attempts in their lives over a decade of exile, we can only just barely imagine. This was not a short period of time, it was 15 years. And then the Battle of Kurukshetra, and through all these traumatic events, Krishna had been there for the Pandavas. Even to the driving of Arjuna's chariot, and even though he made a vow that he would not engage in the battle, he got involved with the battle just for the safety and the protection of his devotee. After the great and bloody battle, the pious King Yudhisthira was so despondent. Lord Krishna protected him. Together with the other Pandavas, they went to the deathbed of Bhishmadev. And there, Bhishmadev instructed Yudhisthira in what he needed to know to be able to rule the kingdom. And he dispelled his despondency. Krishna could have done that, but he wanted his devotee Bhishmadev to do that. And just even a couple of chapters ago, so we can understand that it was very recent in relation to what we're reading now, Krishna saved Maharaj Parikshit while in the womb of his mother, Uttara, from the weapon of Asvatthama. So Krishna did not abandon his devotees at any moment. And Queen Kunti, I can't read this part of the Bhagavatam without going back to the prayers of Queen Kunti, because they're so beautiful. Queen Kunti also expressed the lamentation of these great devotees so eloquently as Krishna was leaving. O Rishikesh, master of the senses and Lord of lords, you have released your mother Devaki, who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious King Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers. My dear Krishna, your lordship has protected us from a poison cake, from a great fire, from cannibals, from the vicious assembly, from sufferings during our exile, and from the battle where great generals fought. And now you have saved us from the weapon of Asvatthama. Still, Krishna is leaving, she's appreciating, but still Kunti concludes that she prefers the calamities over seeing Krishna leaving. Wouldn't we all? Although sometimes I think I'm personally so materialistic that I have great admiration for Queen Kunti actually desiring calamities. Prabhupada says we shouldn't imitate artificially. But finally she prays, I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again so that we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. But now, finally, the inevitable is about to happen. Krishna is leaving. So many conflicting emotions are being experienced by all the citizens of Dwarka. This is not like New York City, where no one knows anybody. This is Dwarka. This is very personal. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This was, their heart and soul was leaving. In the midst of this great sorrow, of course, what will pure devotees do? They will chant his name and his glories. And this is what we are reading today. The beautiful prayers of glorification, reminding us of who is Krishna and his transcendental nature. Srila Prabhupada actually has taught us the same ecstatic methods for marking all of the events in our own lives, our comings and goings, and everything in between. One time, a friend who was not a devotee asked me, she said, "So, how do you celebrate a wedding?" And I said, "Well, you know, there's a wedding ceremony, and then we chant Hare Krishna, and then usually there's a class, a talk, and then we take prasadam. Prasadam is spiritual food." "Oh, very nice. What do you do when there's a funeral?" "Well, you know, there's a little ceremony, and then we chant Hare Krishna, and we talk about Krishna, and we take prasadam." "Oh. What do you do for a birthday?" "Oh, pretty much the same thing." We chant Hare Krishna, we take prasadam, we talk about Krishna. Doesn't matter what is going on in our lives. This is how we celebrate. And does anyone ever get bored of doing that? No. No way, because it's so ecstatic and wonderful to be doing this. Year after year after year, we can be doing practically the same activity, but everyone runs to the temple to do it. So now, even last year, when we were all in lockdown, complete lockdown, what did His Holiness Jaipataka Swami instruct us all to do? Go to your balconies and chant Hare Krishna. Whatever it is, we always just chant the holy name. We remember Krishna. So now the ladies of Dwarka are in great distress. Krishna is leaving. Oh my goodness. Imagine if Radha Madhava were leaving. It's inconceivable, isn't it? Imagine how everyone would feel. The devotees would be beside themselves. So this is what all the residents of Dwarka are experiencing. But they're also in ecstasy. Krishna is right there before them. And so now we are reading the prayers of these ladies. To be noted here is who is reciting these eloquent, poetic, and beautiful glorifications. If I didn't know Srimad Bhagavatam and I just opened my Bhagavatam up to this particular prayer, I might think that the person reciting this prayer is a great sage, a muni, maybe a powerful warrior, seeing that we're in Dwarka, or maybe even the mayor of Dwarka. I don't know, someone very, very important. But no, who's offering these beautiful prayers? It's the ladies up on the roof. No one is even going to hear them. It's not like they're reciting these beautiful prayers and everyone is being so inspired by hearing. You know, there's none of that going on. It's just the ladies up on the roof that are reciting these beautiful prayers. And philosophically, their prayers and exclamations of love are perfect. They are not giddy, sentimental exclamations. Their words to this day are being read and repeated and studied by sadhus, devotees, so many. So how are they glorifying Lord Krishna in this verse today? Let us hear their words again. Oh, how supremely glorified is the dynasty of King Yadu, and how virtuous is the land of Mathurā, where the supreme leader of all living beings, the husband of the goddess of fortune, has taken his birth and wandered in his childhood. Of course, to glorify the land of one's birth, or the land and lineage of someone we love or admire, is a natural human tendency. How many plaques and statues are there all over the world glorifying somebody? Usually somebody that has something to do with that particular town and became a little bit famous, even if just in that town. They're innumerable. We can't even count them. Some of them may be covered in bird dung, but there they are. They're important. They're in the middle of town. And actually, pondering this, I was remembering, I grew up in Canada in a small town, a very small town outside of Montreal. And just next door to this very small town was another slightly bigger town. It was called Sainte Anne de Bellevue. You've never heard this name before, but there it is. And one day I was with my father in town, and we were walking by in the downtown area, and a little incongruous to the whole downtown area was an old farmhouse, very beautiful old farmhouse, very well kept. Sure enough, right in front of it, there's a plaque. So it's got historical significance. So I'm reading it. You know, when you're a child, you read everything you see. So I'm reading this. My father comes up and he says, you know, your great, I forget how many greats he put in there, grandfather, this was his house. I said, oh, really? He said, actually, he said this whole town was his farmland. Oh, really? And my father says, he says, this your great-great-great-grandfather is a very glorious person. I thought, yes, my great-grandfather is a very glorious person. I was a little child, you know, but I was thinking like that. Of course I was thinking like that. This is human nature. In this situation, it's not a perverted reflection. It's the real thing. It's the real thing. These ladies are glorifying the dynasty of King Yadu and the land of Mathurā because of Krishna's appearance in that land and in that dynasty. So we see, they're so ecstatic that they go, alaṁ, alaṁ, twice they say this. And as I read this verse, I actually remember something it's actually definitely more transcendental. In 2015, my husband and I came to Calcutta for the Jaladut celebrations. And you know, we were sitting, we didn't hardly know anybody. And so we were just sitting and we were observing the devotees interacting with each other. And there was a very, very beautiful young girl. I think she might have been around 10 years old. And I was like watching her. She caught my eye. I was watching her. I was amused by what she was doing. And then one of my god sisters, who I really didn't know very well, she leans over and she goes, you know, that little girl is Srila Prabhupada's great-great-granddaughter. Oh, really? Oh, that's amazing. So all of a sudden, that little girl was effulgent. She wasn't just a little girl, she was effulgent. Why? Because she was Prabhupada's great-great-granddaughter. So we see this here in this story, that the residents of Dwarka are glorifying anything and everything that connects with Krishna. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada takes the opportunity to write about the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance. This is important, actually, because without this understanding, an ordinary person might be thinking that the ladies on the roof are exaggerating their praise for the Yadu dynasty and Mathurā. And they might even think that they're a little crazy. So Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, we'll read it again to remember it. I don't know about you, but I have a real Kali Yuga memory. Similarly, the Lord appears in this universe like the sun, and again leaves our sight at another time. He exists at all times and at every place, but by his causeless mercy, when he appears before us, we take it for granted that he has taken his birth. Anyone who can understand this truth in terms of the statements of revealed scriptures certainly becomes liberated just after quitting the present body. Liberation is obtainable after many births and after great endeavor in patience and perseverance, in knowledge and renunciation, but simply by knowing in truth about the Lord's transcendental births and activities, one can get liberation at once. So, of course, this is not the first time that Srila Prabhupada has revealed this truth. That anyone who understands this certainly becomes liberated. So my reaction whenever I read this is, really? It's that simple? Sounds a little too simple to me. I'm reading this. I understand what Srila Prabhupada is saying, but as I was preparing this class yesterday, I was also thinking, in 1 hour, I can break my eṣaḥ fast. I'm really hungry. So obviously I'm not liberated from the dualities of material nature, right? So I was thinking at the time that intellectual appreciation is not full understanding or realization. But by Prabhupada's mercy, I am on the path. And maybe I'm more liberated than I think I am. After all, Srila Prabhupada has taught me that I am spirit soul. I'm not this body. I understand that to some extent. But certainly the realization is not complete. So, it was confusing. My thoughts were confused. You're probably even more confused than I am right now, because I'm trying to explain my confusion, which is more confusing than the confusion. So, I'm not a pure devotee. Therefore, there's room for a lot of mental speculation in my mind. This is disturbing and not conducive to Krishna consciousness. So how to resolve that? I have to first of all know that I must have unflinching faith in the words of my spiritual master. And I was reminded of a quote that I heard when I was young. I was brought up Catholic. And that quote is from the Hebrew Testament, Hebrews 11:1. And it is as follows. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. So Srila Prabhupada has given me the assurance of liberation. And by his words, I can be convinced, though I have not seen. So most of us who are not pure devotees, this is our position. And this is the mercy of the pure devotee. Only a pure devotee can inspire that faith, and most importantly, teach his disciples how to grow and deepen that faith by reminding us of Krishna's instructions in this regard. One instruction from Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, 64. One who can control his senses by practicing the regulated principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord and thus become free from all attachment and aversion. So if we stay with this process, we make that endeavor daily to control our senses, not only do we become liberated, but we are promised the complete mercy of the Lord. That's beyond liberation. Krishna also tells us, only by undivided... What time is it? Oh, that clock is not right. Okay, I better hurry up. So it all starts with faith in the words of the spiritual master and Krishna. By embracing that faith, which is evidenced by sincere endeavor to live by those instructions, I am actually liberated from accepting and rejecting the activity of my mind. This is our liberation, following the instructions of our spiritual master. So, as the roof ladies of Dwarka are here glorifying Krishna's birth, and Srila Prabhupada is reminding us of the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance, let us also take a moment to remember the transcendental reasons for Krishna coming to this world. Whenever, from Bhagavad Gita 4:7, whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. The Supreme Lord comes to this world to reestablish the principles of religion, but not just for this reason. Ultimately, the Lord could, I hope you are hearing me, ultimately the Lord could reestablish the principles of religion in other ways. God is full of potency and is capable of doing whatever he wants, just by a glance. We do have other verses that remind us of why Krishna appears. Srimad Bhagavatam 3.5.7 is just one of them. And this verse reads as follows: You may narrate also about the auspicious characteristics of the Lord in his different incarnations for the welfare of the twice-born, the cows and the demigods. Our minds are never satisfied completely, although we continuously hear of his transcendental activities. We never get satiate from hearing about Krishna. And it's interesting here that it's not that Krishna just appears to give pleasure and protection to the two-legged devotees, to the demigods. This verse actually very specifically describes how his appearance is for the welfare of cows, bulls and cows, of course. This says a lot to us, that the protection of cows is so important that Krishna incarnates for the welfare of cows, as well as for the twice-born and the demigods. But the cows are right in there, with the brahmanas, the demigods, the cows. That's very significant. Krishna is coming to ensure the welfare of cows, not the peacocks, even though he wears a peacock feather, not the horses, even though they are described as being the most beautiful animals. And it's not just in Krishna Leela that he comes for the welfare of cows. Prabhupada says in the purport, the Lord appears in this universe in different incarnations, like Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Nrsimha, and he manifests his different transcendental activities for the welfare of the twice-born, the cows, and the demigods. Very amazing. Lord Matsya came for the welfare of cows. I love to meditate on that. Lord Nrsimhadev as a special name, designating him as the protector of cows. So this is a strong indication for devotees that cow protection is very, very important. It is one of the reasons that Krishna appears in this world. So naturally, this must become a major aspect of our preaching and activities. And for us, disciples and grand-disciples and grand-disciples of Srila Prabhupada, Cow seva is essential. Why is that? Is it because it's a Vedic injunction? Yeah, but that's not the real reason. This is secondary for us. The essential reason is that His Divine Grace instructed His disciples to establish Daivi Varnashram, the 50% of His mission He was not able to complete. This was one of His very last instructions to us. Last instructions are very, very important. So one may ask, what is the connection between Daivi Varnashram and cows? In fact, actually, if we read carefully, we can understand that there is no culture of Daivi Varnashram without cows. There is no Varnashram society without Brahminical culture, and no true Brahminical culture without cow protection. It is the basis. Basis means the foundation on which everything else will grow from. In Los Angeles, Srimad Bhagavatam class, 1968, Prabhupada said, and protect the cows. Actually, we are taking so much advantages. So from the cows, the milk, and from the milk we can make hundreds of vitaminous foodstuffs. Hundreds. Only Prabhupada uses this word vitaminous. I've never read it anywhere else. Wonderful. They're all palatable. So such a nice animal, Prabhupada said. Faithful, peaceful, beneficial. And after taking milk from it, if we kill, does it look very well? So therefore, Krishna is teaching by His practical demonstration how He loves this innocent animal, cow. So human societies should develop Brahminical culture on the basis of protecting cows. There it is, Srila Prabhupada's own words. Develop Brahminical culture on the basis of protecting cows. The truth is, there is no human society without cow protection. And when Prabhupada says that, to develop Brahminical culture on the basis of protecting cows, he's not just addressing the people out there on the street or sitting in McDonald's restaurant. They'll not hear him, and they have no interest in following his instructions. We are that human society he is giving that instruction to. Cow seva is integral to the 50% of his mission entrusted to us. Some devotees are doing that, but not enough. Focusing on cow protection is a massive attack on the personality of Kali. It will take the sincere chanting, the Shakti, the determination of all the devotees to reverse this demoniac propensity. Back in the day, in the early days of Krishna consciousness, every single ISKCON temple was distributing books to please Srila Prabhupada. Even in New Vrindavan, some of us were told to scrape the mud off our boots and get out there and do it. There was so much dedication. It is not that we were all expert salesmen and saleswomen. The sincere endeavor is what sold the books. I was going to tell you a personal story. I'll just tell it real quick. Pittsburgh is very close to New Vrindavan, and there's an international airport there. And in those days, the devotees were distributing Prabhupada's books in the airports. We had permission all over America. So one day I was distributing books in the airport, and I approached this gentleman, and he had a chip on his shoulder and an attitude, and he just laid it on me. He was not pleased that I was offering him a book. And finally he said, "No, I will not take a book from you people." And he walked away. Now it just so happened that afternoon I had been told that before I leave I should pack my bags, because at the end of the day, and I was given a ticket, I was going to be flying to Chicago to distribute books at the airport in Chicago. because us New Vrindavan devotees, we had permission to distribute in Chicago in the evening. So I was told this devotee was leaving some family situation, so I had to go. Okay, so half an hour later I got on the plane. There wasn't all this security in those days. Half an hour later I got on the plane, I get to Chicago, I put my little suitcase in a whatever, those locked things. And I go out and I start distributing books. I didn't have all my books, I just had a few. But I was given more books, and I'm out there and I'm doing it again. I wasn't really a good book distributor. And anyway, this one man standing there kind of sideways, but I just approached him kind of sideways, and I said, "Excuse me, sir." And he turns around, and it's the very same man that had been in the Pittsburgh airport. And he turns around and he looks at me. He goes, "You, weren't you just in Pittsburgh doing this?" I said, yeah, I was. He said, "Do you do this all the time? You just go from airport to airport?" I said, no, this is a special situation. He said, "Oh." He said, "But still, you worked all day and now you're here?" I said, yeah, it's special. He goes, "Let me have one of your books." So it's a wonderful experience. So this is the kind of, not that I was so dedicated, I'm not telling this story to say that I was such a dedicated devotee. I dragged my feet a lot. I hated going out there and distributing books, to be honest. It's very difficult. But there was a sincere endeavor, and everyone was focused on it. All of us. And we need to do this now with cow seva. It doesn't matter if one is a brahmachari, a householder, a GBC, a sannyasi, it doesn't matter. Each in our own way, and according to whatever ashram we're in, we need to focus on the ecstasy of cow seva. I even have it from reliable sources that there was one temple where the brahmacharis, it was a big enough temple, I guess, and the brahmacharis in that temple, when they did something they shouldn't have been doing, or they were too much trouble, they were given the service of going to the Goshala as a punishment. So when I heard that, I thought, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. It should be a privilege. It should be that if you're the most sincere devotee and you are doing everything as best you can, you get the privilege of going to the Goshala and serving the cows. So this is just conditioning. This is just, we're not thinking correctly. We're forgetting what Srila Prabhupada said in one purport, and I know the purport, but now I forget it, and I forgot to write it down. It's in the 10th canto. Anyway, for Krishna, the pleasure of cows is more important than the pleasure of brahmanas. Whoa, that's a pretty heavy statement. I am running out of time, so I'm going to shorten this a little bit. But there was a wonderful conversation between Srila Prabhupada and Mr. Hennis, who from the International Labor Organization of the United Nations. And Prabhupada is saying to this man, "We have started our community project, our one community project. I believe that was New Vrindavan, where we are keeping cows also. The cows are giving more milk than in other farms. They are so jubilant. Even up to 80 pounds of milk they are giving because they know that these people will not kill me. We don't kill their calves. In other farms, as soon as the calf is there, in front of the mother, they are killed. You see? So if these things go on without any brain, without any intelligence, you may make hundreds of organizations. The society will never be happy. This is our verdict." So we are a society. We are a human society. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So let us all take Srila Prabhupada's instructions into our hearts. The instruction is not just for farmers or for human society out there. It's for us. One godbrother and godsister who have a small Surabhi Gotra farm. Surabhi Gotra is the Vedic name for herd of cattle. They said, and I'll just finish with this, the time for talking is past. Now is the time for doing. Serving cows transforms lives, enriches Krishna consciousness, and makes everything auspicious. Do it, support it, and make it grow. By doing this, the ISKCON movement will increase its credibility exponentially. Yoginath Das and Uday Kirti Dasi. So, thank you very, very much. Hare Krishna. We have a few minutes. Please remember, we need to use this. I wear hearing aids and I'm hard of hearing. So if you have a question, you either have to come up and ask the question or use this. I don't know how to use it. Oh, it's on. Okay. I guess that's enough.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Haribo.
Thank you, Mataji. Just it's not a question. I just want you to repeat the quotation about the cow. You said the pleasure for the cow is more important than what?
For Krishna, the pleasure of cows is more important than the pleasure of Brahmins. The beginning of this paragraph and the verse is talking about how Krishna delights in giving pleasure to the cows and the Brahmins. We know this, right? We've heard this description so many times. To the Brahmins and the cows, And in the purport, Prabhupada says, he repeats it again. Krishna, we see it so many times in the Srimad Bhagavatam, how Krishna protects the Brahmins, he gives pleasure to the Brahmins, he offers respects to the Brahmins. But for Krishna, the pleasure of cows is more important than the pleasure of Brahmins. So we should take this cow seva so seriously. So seriously. That doesn't mean that we have to bring the cows into our apartments. They would not actually like it. For them, their pleasure is not to be in an apartment. Their pleasure is to be in a field full of green grass. But we should, as a society, make an endeavor to provide that for our cows. Goshalas are okay. They're okay. It's a shelter. But cows, bulls, they don't belong in goshalas. They belong in the fields, in the green grass. Krishna took the cows into the fields every day. He showed us what to do. At night, they came back in for protection. But during the day, they were out in the fields eating the green grass. And he even showed us how to do it. You read in Krishna book, you see that it's described how they would go from one forest to another. You know what this is called nowadays? Rotational grazing. It's actually an excellent way of making sure that the cows are always getting fresh green grass. What the farmer will do is he'll have a big piece of land, and instead of just letting the cows go here, there, and everywhere, he will partition off certain areas and move his cows from one area to another as the grass becomes too eaten up in one area. And by the time he comes back to the first area, the grass is green again, and the whole process can continue. Yes, Prabhu. Oh, yes. Please speak into the microphone.
Related with the comment, you say that Krishna protects the cows more than the Brahmanas. And he says, in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a quotation, and he says that hate accept offenses. For him, it's easier to accept an offense against to the Brahmanas and not to the cows. And he said, why? because the brahmanas, they can defend themselves, but the cow, they cannot defend themselves.
That's right.
Yeah, and somewhere in Bhagavatam he says that.
That's right. They can't. They can't. There's actually there's a sannyasi who lives in New Vrindavan, and he was in charge of the bulls and the oxen there, and he wrote a very important. He gave a talk recently, and he was saying how not only do they need our protection, but we need their protection. We need the protection of cows, and he was talking about how, you know, we can plow our fields with tractors, but if we take the time and trouble to train our oxen nicely, in non-violent way, in a way that the oxen are inspired to work. My husband trains oxen and works with oxen, and they are inspired to work. They come running when they see him because they love to work, and he treats them so nicely. And Maharaj was saying, Varshana Swami is the person who said this. He was saying that the oxen will teach us to be patient, because there's no way you can train an oxen properly without a tremendous amount of patience. It takes several months of patiently doing the same thing over and over again. If you start beating them, they won't listen to you. So what you said is so true. They protect us, we protect them, and it's an ecstatic relationship of love. And so it's perfect.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you very much for a nice class. You mentioned at one point that we are liberated and most of us are pure devotees. It's because
most of us are what?
Pure. If I heard you right, you said most of us are pure devotees.
Are not pure. We're not.
Are not pure devotees.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
We're in Prabhupada's vision. Prabhupada would say, "It's just a matter of time." Okay. Prabhupada said that one time. But we shouldn't become puffed up and think, therefore, I'm a pure devotee. We should think the opposite. Yes.
Thank you. And regarding liberation, like, how do we think of ourselves? I think you made a comment on that as well regarding Krishna's birth and activities being transcendental, and if we understand that, we get liberated like that.
How do we? I'm really sorry. There's an echo even. You know what? I think we should end the class, okay, and you come here and ask me.
Okay, sure.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.